Yeah. So, we've been working through the Psalms. Last week we had Psalm 18. This week we're on Psalm 19. And how many people, if you had to summarize kind of what Psalm 19 is about, what would you say in general, if anyone actually read ahead?
Creation.
Creation, okay? So we're looking at David looking at the creation of all, and the evidence that we can see just by looking around us in terms of creation. And in the quarterly, it kind of does take a look at how creation compared to the evolutionists look at how things happened. Just go to Psalm 19, and we'll start with 1 through 6. And someone want to read 1 through 6 for us in Psalm 19.
I got it. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech, no language, where their voice is not heard. The line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and a circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof.
Verse 1 basically telling us the heavens do what? Declare the glory of God. How many people in your lives have ever gone, especially when you were kids, maybe not so much as adults, but you're kids, you go out in the field and you lay out and you look up at the stars. Now, around this area, we have it pretty lucky because what do we not have? We don't have a lot of lights around. So when you go out and you look up at the stars, you can see the stars. It's a little more difficult in some of the more industrialized, more cityfied areas. But you look up at all those stars, you just have to wonder, did it just happen? I really think that's kind of where I look at things is it didn't just happen. How can anyone say that these things just took place? This Big Bang theory. People who talk to me about the Big Bang, I like to remind them every explosive needs someone to light the fuse. But the firmament showeth his handiwork. What does it mean with that?
It means the star shows God's handiwork. It shows what God has done.
Well, if we look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 6, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters from the waters. What's it we're talking about? And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. The firmament showeth his handiwork. When you look up those stars, it's how could when you look at it, how can these constellations just happen to create these pictures? They just sort of happen to fall into place. I don't accept that for the life of me, that that's just on one of those things that took place. It was by a grand design, and we all worship that grand designer.
Well, that and the fact that they haven't disappeared yet. I mean, they're still there after hundreds of years.
And how are we reinforced with that? They haven't disappeared. And how do we reinforce the fact that we can? Because night after night, in verse 2, night unto night showeth their knowledge. There's no speech, no language where their voice is not heard. The stars basically speak their own language, don't they? And it means something to everyone. And I think we all get the same. Well, in verse 4, their line has gone through all the earth. What are we talking about there?
Wherever you are, you see the same stars.
Okay, you see the same stars. I'm going to go a little deeper on that one. Hopefully, I'm not too far off track. When you get a family, you get what is referred to as a family line, right? A family tree, a line of a family descent. What was it God told Abraham? And he reinforced it with Isaac.
He'd have his offspring would be like the numbers of the sand of stars.
Right. The descendants would, if you could number the stars in heaven, that'd be the number of your descendants. And I kind of take that same. Their line has gone through all the earth. Well, Abraham's line has gone throughout all of the earth as well, hasn't it? Right. So I kind of take that same measure on that we're talking about the stars, but I think we're also talking about God's people. Kind of all encompassing the earth as well. And I think we can take a look now that we have made that connection. I think now we could take a look back at some of the earlier verses and see that we could apply God's people to where we're reading about stars, and we can extrapolate a little bit there and see, aren't we some of these stars that God's talking about here? So, because at night, what is a star doing? Shining bright, shining its light, right? What is it that God wants us doing? We need to be that light unto that darkened world too. So I really look at that whole, yes, David is talking about creation, but I also think it's us trying to be those stars, be those little beacons of light out there to draw people. At night, how did the ship guide itself? It guided itself by the stars. And I think that's what we need to be. Is there's all those ships out there in the darkness, and we need to be the stars to help guide them where they need to be going. I know they're kind of taking a different slant on this than maybe some people would, but I think that there's a lot to be learned off this.
The first few verses I took it as that God is showing His creation that it goes out all through the world, and the world isn't without excuse in believing in God, because God shows His proof every day through creation.
absolutely as well. When you look around, people want to deny God. They want to deny. That's why they come up with this Big Bang theory. It's their way of trying to deny what they see in front of them, which is an obvious sign of God. Because if they accept it as an obvious sign of God, then they are held accountable.
They're held accountable anyhow, they just don't realize it.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the thing. And that's by that conscious choice to try to downplay God in that decision. So, verse 6, well, 5 and 6, what's being talked about? In order to get it, you have to take a look at the end of verse 4. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun.
Or it could be the SON.
Because what's verse 5 take us into? The bridegroom. So we've got the double meaning of sun here. We've got the obvious meaning of the bridegroom. Coming out of his chamber, rejoices as a strong man to run the race. Is going forth from one end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it. And what else? Nothing hid from the heat thereof. Can anyone really hide from the sun?
Nope.
You can try to seek shelter, but there are very few places on earth that the sun does not reach and touch. Oh, in some of the very distant, deepest parts of jungles. But even then, is it total darkness? There's some light that gets through. It may not be direct sunlight, but there is some light that gets through. That's the key thing. This is another thing that people don't like to think about, because light does what? It reveals the sins that we are all living with, we're all trying to hide. Seven through 10. Someone will go ahead and read 7 through 10 for us.
The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey in the honeycomb.
Okay. Law. What do we think of when we hear the word law? Commandments, rules, restrictions, right?
Yep.
The Hebrew word Torah is where the word law is coming from. However, the teachers says there's a second meaning to the word Torah, which we usually interpret as law, and that means instruction. And while those are God's commandments, those commandments are to do what?
Teach.
They're to instruct us. They're to teach us. Teach us right from wrong. Because really, ultimately, isn't that what laws are? Yeah, okay, you have to follow the law. Why? Well, they're trying to teach us proper behavior. They're trying to teach us proper society. Those who break the law, what has to happen? Well, they have to go to remedial school, which is called prison, and learn all over again how to follow those rules. And why do you think that prisons are so much harsher? It's because those people need to be broken down to start following these laws. Well, the same thing applies to us as God's children. We need to follow His laws. We need to follow His teachings. Fortunately, we're not under the law. We're under grace. but we still need to follow what God has told us. Otherwise, what happens? We get sent to remedial boot camp. And he's going to start breaking things. Yeah. Well, he's going to start breaking things down a little more harsh for us, like what happens to prisoners in prison. He's going to start, okay, you can't have the full, so I'm going to start narrow focusing you. And that's when we start feeling that correction, that chastisement, that, oh, geez, I feel like he's pushing me in. Well, that's because you took too free a rein with things. Now you need to be on the straight and narrow path. God's going to straighten that path up for you if you have to. You should be doing it on your own. The law of the Lord is perfect. The teaching of the law of the Lord is perfect. We can never find fault with the Lord, can we? Nope. What's it going to do? It's going to convert the soul. Hopefully we're going to take lost souls and turn them into useful tools for the Lord, aren't we? And that's what the converting of the soul is. Testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. In Timothy and Titus, Paul says that the Bible is good for what?
Instruction and reproof.
Instruction, reproof.
Correction. Yep.
It's sound doctrine.
Yes.
Okay? How does something become sound doctrine? Well, it's been proven. We've been talking about evolution. Has evolution been proven?
Nope.
Hence, it's still a theory. Big Bang been proven?
Nope.
No. But then they tell us, well, you can't prove. But you're telling us to accept yours as fact. You can't prove yours either. And I can prove mine.
If the Big Bang did work, those constellations wouldn't stay together.
Exactly. Because they'd be constantly spiraling further and further. Yeah. They don't like to admit those things. Well, we're seeing that light from billions of years ago. Uh-huh. So we'd see those lights moving farther apart over the 4, 5, 6,000 years that men have been on the planet. We should have seen some movement in those from. They haven't.
Slow.
Yeah. Statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. We should be happy that we've got these restrictions. Amen. Anything that nature abhors, and we don't want to get into talking about nature and whatnot right now. Nature abhors a vacuum. Nature also abhors chaos. You look at the animal kingdom that the scientists are so proud and loud to look at. In most animal kingdoms, do they just go wandering off doing what they want? Usually they pack up, don't they? And usually when they pack up, what usually happens? They'll overrun an area, but
There's an alpha.
there's usually a leader. There's usually an alpha. And that's what I'm looking at, is that they usually look for some kind of leadership. They're looking for some kind of order in their group. Elephants are a matriarchal society, so there's going to be a female elephant that's going to take control. Gorillas, there's usually the biggest, baddest gorilla becomes the alpha male. Same with lions. It's always that way throughout most of the animal kingdom. Well, why wouldn't it be that way with humans? Well, it is. We need that structure as humans. That's why we've got the Lord to fall back upon with the instruction that He has given us. And that's why, for those not following the Lord, that's why we institute governments is to provide that instruction. Key element in terms of the U.S. government, though, was that we instituted the government to protect the rights of the people given to us by the Creator. That was one of the shining points of our government system, was that we didn't create the government to provide structure. It was created to protect the rights that were God-given.
Right. Well, and we created that structure to actually limit that government, to allow the people to have those choices.
Exactly. But as this world spins further and further away from the Lord, they have to allow the government to have more control, because, again, you can only work so far out before you have to be brought back in.
Well, and you see people wanting that control. They're willing to give it to the government because they're saying, we need you to take care of us.
Yep. They'd rather let the government control them than actually turn to God where they need to be for that control. Because when we had a strong, moral, church-going society, did we need such a strong government? No. Fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. Judgments of the Lord, true and righteous altogether. Do we have to fear an unrighteous God? No. I'm saved. Thank you, Lord, for that. Because when I go to judgment, do I have to worry about a bad judgment?
No, you don't have to worry if he's going to be cranky or not like you because of what you're wearing.
Exactly. Having a bad day that day, the judge runs late to get in, and now he's cranky, and so he's going to take it out on the first person he has for a hearing, right? Hasn't had his coffee. No. Everyone's going to be the same before his eyes. And all sin is going to be viewed on the same level and same plane before his eyes. And that's what we need to be aware of, and that's what we're going to try to get people to understand and need to get themselves right. We need to remember that on a daily basis, because if he were to come back today, how many of us aren't right in the eyes of the Lord right now? I know I'm not. So that's why when Jesus was washing Peter's feet, what was he showing? The daily cleansing, that daily touch-up that we need to be doing with ourselves. That daily, hey, okay, I've accepted you, Christ. I've been cleansed thoroughly. But I don't need to do that thorough cleansing every day, do I? I've been thoroughly cleansed. Now I just need that daily touch-up work. And unless you're doing that on a daily basis, someone's going to Blue Letter over there. Unless you do that daily cleansing on yourself, you're not going to be right before the Lord when he comes back. And one thing we need to remember, we don't know when he's coming back. He talks about it like a thief in the night. One thing we talked about in men's study, we talked about the talents. The three servants, one was given 5, one was given 3, one was given 1. The one that was given 1 didn't do anything with it, so he had it taken away and given to the one that had done the most. Well, I think the same.
Called wicked and slothful.
Yeah, he was called wicked and slothful because he hadn't done what he was supposed to do. Well, I think that part of what we're supposed to do is that daily cleansing. Because I know I want the best that Jesus can give me. when it comes time. I don't want to give him reason to take stuff away from me. High percentage of us here are parents. We know one of the biggest punishments we can do to a kid is take away something. I don't want to be there and the feet of the Lord and have him say, "Oh, I'm going to take this away from you. Guess what? You don't get it back."
You lose that, Joel. You lose that.
Ah, darn it! I don't want. Oh, there goes another one. Whoop, whoop. So we just got to remember that as we go around. We got to keep ourselves pure, folks. And I know that we can't on an everyday basis because we're humans. So we just need to be.
But that's what the blood's there for, our daily cleansing. Not our salvation, but our daily cleansing.
Absolutely. And it reminds me that we need to be in that constant state of prayer. And we need to be, when we do things that we know cut off that person in traffic, oh, I need to be on that constant state of prayer on that one. Or when that person cuts me off in traffic,
And
I
then
need to be.
give you a pretty little gesture.
I'm number one.
Give him a number 5.
Yeah, pick one. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. What's gold? I know it's kind of a foolish question. We call it a precious metal, don't we? Why is it a precious metal?
The value.
Why do we put value to it?
Because it's limited.
What can we do with it?
Using its currency.
Does it have any intrinsic value to us?
It's pretty.
We put the value on it.
Look at honey. Is honey worth, money-wise, anywhere near the amount the gold is? But doesn't honey have more of an intrinsic value to us? Like, be a food to keep us alive?
Well, gold
Can be medicine.
too.
In some ways.
Moses fed it to the people there one time when he come off the mountain. So.
Yeah.
That wasn't a good case.
That was a bad medicine for us.
Maybe so.
Do either one spoil?
No.
But when we get to heaven,
Pick an old crusty iron.
what's gold going to be when we get to heaven?
The road.
It's going to be the paving stones. There's the old joke about the guy that dies and he goes to heaven with a couple of gold bricks. Glad to see you, but why'd you bring paving stones? That's not what's important. Quarterly talks about those who refuse to give their hearts to Jesus will never understand the deeper truths. And this is more where we were with men's study this Friday. We talked about the parable of the sower. And one of the disciples, one of the 12, asking Jesus, why do you speak in parable? And what was the response that Jesus had for them? What I'm talking about is for you, not for them. It's for you to know, not for them to know. For when they want to know it, they'll understand it. It's for you to understand now. That's why he spoke in parables. And I think that that's why a lot of people, they're not ready for Christ. And so the pure truths of the Bible are like puzzles to them. They're like the parables. They don't understand it. They don't get it. Why?
Well, if you really think about it too, parables are spiritual truths. And if you don't have Christ in your life, how are you going to understand something that's spiritual?
Well, the full truth is only revealed in the saved people.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's why for a lot of people just to sit down and read the Bible, well, I read the Bible and it didn't make sense to me. Well, it's because you didn't accept. You haven't accepted, so therefore it's not going to be. It's like a lock, and you have to have the key. That acceptance of Christ is the key that unlocks the mysteries. Does it mean everything's going to be open to you all at once?
No.
How many of us have read the same verse 3, 4, 5 times and found different meaning to it each time? That's what we need to be aware of, and that's how we grow. Because each meaning has deeper layers. It's like Shrek and the onion. There's layers there, and once you get older and more mature in the Lord, that surface layer is gone. You begin to see stuff underneath. You begin to get deeper meanings. There's a lot deeper meanings to what we're going through today that someone else could probably teach you on. And you might sit there going, huh? Some of us may be prepared for it, some may not. That's why we need to do our part, not only for that daily cleansing, but we need to be in the Word. We need to be studying the Word. I didn't post them this week on Facebook, but each week I try to put up now what we're studying. And to pay special attention to whichever verse it's going to be that week that we'll be covering. Like this next week, we're going to be doing Psalms 27 through 31, but we're focused on Psalm 27. We should be reading all of those Psalms, but pay a little special attention to 27 because that's where the discussion is. I didn't post it this week, and so I don't hear as much discussion. Just more me yammering. I can yammer with the best of them.
Amen.
I taught for enough years. I can yammer with the best of them, right, Miss Becky? You kind of have to learn how to yammer after a while because the kids sit there with that look on their face.
And then
This
I hear
look?
what words you're saying.
Yeah, exactly that one. I'm here, but I've checked out.
He knows that look very well. 25 years now, is it? That phase?
I had that look every time I sat in a science class.
Psalms 19 through 11 through 14, verses 11 through 14. If we want to have someone please.
Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer.
What does the Word do? The Word first, as you read through your quarterly, the Word first warns us. What are we being warned of?
Sin.
Sin. Dangers. It's like that robot on Lost in Space. Danger, Will Robinson. Well, that's what the Bible's telling us. There's danger out there. We need to be ready. We need to be prepared for that danger. We need to watch out for it. There's no... I teased Paul about trying to find a Coast Guard klaxon to kind of jump him every now and then. There's no alarm going to ring. There's no danger warning signs going to flash. We need to be... Again, it gets us back into our daily study we need to be attuned enough with the Lord to be able to see those danger signs by ourselves, because they're not going to jump out at us. Danger sign jumps out at Jim, he'll just run over it anyway.
That's right. Yeah, my way.
But if we keep the word, what do we have hope of? Rewards. Is it a promise? Yeah. It was a promise, isn't it? But we have to hold up our end. We have to do our part. It's not like the Obama administration where you're going to get a reward and not have to do anything. I think right there alone is proof that God's a Republican. I don't know where to go after that one.
And in closing.
And in closing. Do the Paul Brennan close 5-time routine.
You keep talking anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we kind of talked about it. Those who follow the statutes, those who follow the law, those who follow the teachings, they will be rewarded. But those who choose not to, there's going to be a loss.
You get to become an eternal martyr.
If you're saved and you don't follow, you're going to lose those rewards. If you're not saved and you choose to ignore, that loss is going to be something far greater. And that's the thing that we need to be worrying about for other people outside of this. Talks about the word being a spiritual mirror. Anyone ever see that before? Kind of get that? You read something in the Bible and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that's me. Yeah. There's going to be those times when we're going to read something, we're going to be like, oh, okay, that one's, wow, that one hurt. That one was a little bit close. Well, if it's a little bit close, there's probably a reason for it.
Shows us what we're doing wrong, what we don't see that we're doing.
Absolutely. It's to be used for correction. Oftentimes we take a look at Timothy or Titus and we talk about how it's a useful tool for correction, referring to correcting others in the church. Well, it's also useful for correcting ourselves. Sometimes we need others to point these things out to us. Sometimes if we're finely attuned to the Word, those corrections will be pointed out for us. Jeez, why has everything been going bad lately? Flip, flip. Oh, that's why. Okay. I gotta get myself right. That's why in verse 13, keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me, then I shall be upright. We're talking about presumptuous sins.
Sins that we think we're doing right and we're not.
I know I'm doing this right. I know I'm doing this for the right reasons. Not the way the Lord is concerned. My mind totally went blank. I had someone in mind. But who can we think of in the Bible that knew they were doing something for the right reason? Okay, I got it back. Paul, obviously. Knew he was persecuting Christians, going out and killing Christians because it was the right thing to do, and then all of a sudden, what does he find out? Jesus comes down, blinds him, but then when he's healed, there's the physical healing of his eyes, but then there's also the spiritual opening of his eyes as well, where he realizes, I was doing the wrong thing. What I thought was right, I now realize was wrong.
He thought he was protecting the faith, and he was destroying the faith.
A verse you could use and say that the Word of God is about correcting others, but it's also for ourselves is 2 Timothy 3:16. As all scripture is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, reproof, for correction, and for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. So that's a personal thing as well, which will tie in real good with what you're saying today.
The Lord likes those 3:16 verses a lot, doesn't he?
That's the reason they
Timothy 3:16, John 3:16.
Once you get to confuse with Romans 8:28. I want this abuse, I'll go back to my office.
You love it. You love it. You know it.
The last thing, ultimately, if we allow the Lord to work on us, is our thought process going to change?
Oh yeah, totally.
It should. If we find ourselves having the same old thoughts, have we really let the Lord work on us yet?
No.
We need to be... You know you've been touched when your actions and your thoughts, people's actions often don't reflect what their thought process is. It's usually called what? What do we call someone whose actions don't?
Hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy. Hypocrites. Pharisees. I'm going to tell you one thing, but then I'm going to go off and do another. Or I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to play the role. It's awful hard to pinpoint the mental hypocrite, because they play the role so well, you don't really see what the mental process is showing you.
It will eventually show it very bad.
It does eventually show through. Take that.
Be sure your sins will find you out.
Oh, that Greek Orthodox priest down in Bangor.
Oh, yes.
He was putting on a good show, but eventually his thoughts found him out. That and his little video camera. But any last thoughts on what we've gone over today? Any questions about what we talked about? I was so happy to have this psalm because it was a pretty straightforward psalm. Some of the psalms are triple, quadruple meaning psalms, those nice layered ones that come to bite you in the butt when you're trying to... The first one we did was one of those. Thought I was prepared, and boy, that one just came around to bite me on that one. So these past two have been pretty good, straightforward ones. But not seeing any further comment. Any last prayer requests for the day before we move on?
My family.
Paul's family. How's your mom?
Still hanging in there from last I heard.
Anyone else? Pray for those that aren't here today for whatever reasons. I'm a little disappointed that there's a few people not here, but it is what it is. Well, with that being said, Brother Matt Warner, would you mind closing us out today?
Thank you again, dear Lord, for allowing us to come together. Thank you for the understanding that you've given to us. Please help us to apply it into our lives, into our hearts. May we worship you today. Put aside all the things that are hindering us from fully relying upon you.